before I start assembling the whole top end over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the valves so I can just kind of set these and forget them, and when it's time to put the head on, I just throw it on. I don't have to deal with the some weird angles with the valves anymore. So per Tbolt, intake is supposed to be 0.003 or 0.08 millimeters, and the exhaust is 0.13 millimeters. And right now it looks like intake's pretty tight. I think it's a little too tight. And let's see if I can one-handed feeler gauge the exhaust. And, and the exhaust is too loose. Alright, so I'm going to start messing with these. I'll try and get some different shots with the big camera. The intake's actually good. The exhaust is a little loose. I can slide this feeler gauge in there and it's got pretty much no resistance once it's between the tappet and the little housing here. So we're going to undo this 8mm, and this is a pretty fiddly little science here. Wait, is it an 8mm? I thought it was an 8. Alright, let me grab a 10 for 10. What? There's no way. Is that a 9? Wow. I think it's a 9. Weird. Alright. Those are 10s. I need a 9. So there's a little nut on the top of the tappet. And you just crack that loose. Once that's loose enough, you can spin the inner portion to kind of bring the value down. And so we're looking for 0.005. 5 or point, was it 5? Is that 5 thousandths? I think it's 5 thousandths. I'm not a machinist. But you spin the middle portion of it until it's just barely grazing across. So right now it's too loose. Tighten it up a little bit. Starting to just kind of rub a little bit. And it's going to get a little tighter when we tighten it down because you're turning the lock nut to the right and it'll tighten the middle section. So we kind of want to leave a little bit of a guess here. You leave it just looser than we want it. And we tighten down the lock nut. I'd actually venture to say it's still a little on the loose side. Let's try one more time. That's about perfect, so back it up just a touch more. And tighten. It's just ever so slightly too loose. Let's try that. Yeah, that feels about right. There's just a little tiny amount of drag on it. I'm doing 0.03 on the intake, just check it one more time before I seal this all up. Get in there. Yeah, just a tiny amount of drag. Perfect. So we'll take these off. I don't need you for anything anymore. Then we can just screw these right onto our new head. Alright, now we're getting into the fun part. So I've got a little cap full of oil here for assembling pretty much the whole top end. I just want to lube everything up as we go along. And what I need first is the piston. Switched over to the GoPro. Hopefully this is a little bit better. So we got the piston in is the intake, so it goes on the top side. We have the let me get you. These are the sandwich rings that go around the oiling ring. The oiling ring. And then we have a bottom ring, which is flat black, and a top ring, which has a silver kind of edge to it. So first, one small thin boy. All the way on the bottom. We'll put that on the right side of the in marking. And we'll get the oily boy in there. Perfect. So I got the bottom one on, the oiling ring in there. Our gap is still right here. Then if luck prevails, we'll be able to get on our second little retaining ring for the oiling ring. And we'll try and orient that 180 degrees from the bottom one. No, it went on the damn, went on the other ring land. So let's get that down. There, perfect. And that just slides right in there. Haha, we did it. All right. Great success. Oiling ring's done. Then goes the black one, which we're going to put we're going to do 180 from each side again. And these are a little bit harder since they're more rigid. Really don't want to force it, just kind of want to coerce it into that little landing. And so close, but yet so far. Okay, got the bottom, I got one side in. Okay, got it. So that's sitting, why is it so tight? Oh, there we go. That's sitting on the right-hand side. Now I'll get the top piston ring and set on the left. We orient it, perfect. So I got all the rings on, it's good to go. The next thing we want to do is to get our wrist pin out. And our circlips. And what I'm going to do first is on the side opposite of where I'm working, I'll put the circlip in here. And there's a little groove in there that you can get it into. Helps if you have some nice needle nose pliers. And rotate it in as you kind of push a little bit. Let's get that kind of oriented a little better. And so just rest it in the groove and then rotate as you kind of go in. And then it should find itself in that little groove. Just like that. Perfect. And in so doing that, make sure your rings are still in the right orientation. Slide it over the connecting rod. That's when we're going to take a little bit of oil and smother your wrist pin on it. or smother your wrist pin with it. And then shove the wrist pin through the crank and it'll sit on the other circlip. That's wonderful right there. Then we can take the other circlip. You know, I probably should have put the gasket on first. Let's see if it fits over the piston. I mean, it should, but just making sure. All right, get that out of the way. Pull the chain through there. I'll sit there for later. Get your other circlip. Same thing as on the other side, you just want to twist it in once you get in that little groove. And this just takes a lot of practice. Some days they go in really easy and some days it's a pain in the butt, which this one will probably end up being now that I've said something. And these things will go flying, so you might want to be wearing safety glasses when you're doing this. I've never had one hit me in the eye, but I really would hate to have this pointy piece of metal sticking out of my eye as I'm working on an engine. Of course, like I said, now that I said something, it's going to be a total pain in the butt to get this wrist pin in. Or this circlip in. There we go. All right. With that on, the next thing we want to do is we want to get these little dowel pins in. And these go on the stator side of the engine. I was going to say the left, but you know, orientation. And these sit in there. All right. From here, take a little oil. I like to rub the piston a little bit on the rings, just so when you're sliding it onto the cylinder, it's not fighting its way on. And I'll oil the cylinder as well. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot. There's a gasket that goes right here. So in this little baggie, we've got a couple of these. One of these black ones goes right here. Take a little oil and stick it to there so it doesn't pop out. Okay. And just apply it to the walls. You can't put too much in there, so I like to do a decent amount. Now you want to compress, since our gaps are on the sides, you're going to want to compress, if you do it in the same orientation as me, you want to compress from the top so it closes those gaps. And then slide the cylinder over the piston. Don't you want to go in your home? I got the first ring in. Here comes the second. No, almost had it. There we go. Then the oiling ring. And it's on. Oop. Pull the chain through, timing chain, cam chain, words. There we go. Then we want to slide this all the way down, making sure the gasket stays and that that black O-ring hasn't moved, which it has not. And then slide this all the way in. There we go. All right, cylinder and piston on. And then we put the head gasket on. And with the head gasket goes another black ring, a little oil on there, and a small green O-ring on this channel over here. We need the roller. Roller goes on. Use a little, whatever you can to keep it in place. In this case, a screwdriver. Roller in. Make sure this is all aligned still. Perfect. I'll have to move it up just a little bit when we put the head on. Got a little pin that's coming out of the valve. There we go. I was wondering why it wasn't going on. Rest the head against the cylinder. We've got a couple of screws on the other side that we can kind of just hand tighten. One tightens the cylinder to the engine. The other tightens the head to the cylinder. And this will allow us to kind of work a little easier without making sure having to constantly readjust everything. Just very loosely on there just to hold it. Once we tighten down the head bolts, then we can crank these down a bit. So I forgot 2 pins that go on before the head goes on. So we're going to throw those in real quick. I remembered just as I turned the camera off last time, before I started getting into the cam chain. These go down here and up here. This goes on one way. Let's see. The gasket should be a pretty good indication. I think this is backwards. Yeah. You want to use the copper washer, which is this boy, down over the oiling tube. And then just some regular washers around the outside here. And then the open bolt goes on the lower section right here. Perfect. Now for the fun part. We want to set the timing, and we want to get the cam chain on, the cam chain gear on. And this thing is a pain in the butt to get aligned, but definitely take your time. You don't want to be going bending valves new head that you just put on. So the gear has a, oh, where is it? Has a little circle. You see that little circle in the glint? And that lines up with this little notch that's right here at the front. So you want to do your best to align all of this perfectly and slip the cam gear over all of these teeth so that it lines up where this circle matches that and the T matches the little notch in the case back here. So just like that, and then we want to tighten it all down. The fun thing is, it's not a whole lot of room in here, so you kind of have to set the gear in the chain, kind of hope that you have it lined up enough, and then bolt it in. You'll probably miss it by a tooth or two back and forth, but once you have a general idea of where it should sit, it's pretty easy to adjust from there. So this will probably be a time lapse because it's going to take me forever to do this. It always takes me forever to do this. So. I can't believe as soon as I switched over the GoPro, it just kind of fell into place. But you can see that little notch and that little circle line up, and the T and the little notch in the case line up. Okay, so the last time I did that, it took me like an hour to get that right. And this time, everything just kind of slipped into place. We just have to bolt the gear onto the camshaft, and everything will be good to go. So like little 8s, and they just go right in there. I'll have to tighten up everything in the head too. I left these loose and the cam chain tensioner just while everything's getting settled. This is just cheap 1040 motorcycle oil. I think it's, what was it? Castrol Activo or something. And I'll kick this over a few times so I can start circulating some oil in it before I actually start it when we go to start it. Won't just dry kick it. And there's a little lip here that this cover catches on. So I'll position it kind of right next to that lip. And screw it in from this side. And as it rotates, it'll catch on that lip. I do need to put the cam chain tensioner and the oil plug in. So let's do that real quick. It's just one of those eBay kind of knockoff brand ones that's already pre-drilled, because drilling through these is actually kind of a pain in the butt. And it's covered in metal shavings, yay! Just like everything that's coming out of this damn engine. So this is the drain hole, and this is the cam chain tensioner bolt, I don't know, housing? What the hell do you call that? Anyway. Cam chain tensioner goes into the curved one, and the oil nut goes into the vertical one. We're going to run this engine just for a little bit, and then we're going to pull out the oil just because I want to flush out anything that's still in the system. It's going to slide back in there. Here's the spring of the thing. Let's take a look at the tensioner in this one. Ooh, lovely. Alright, this is not going anywhere near that engine. It's covered in disgusting metal shavings. So we'll spray these two off. The spring can't really hold that much on it. Alright, so after the tensioner goes the spring of the thing, followed by the plug. Alright, it just kind of shoves in there. Alright, kickstand goes on this side. Right, yeah, opposite the kickstarter. Cool. Are you serious? Are you serious? This just right, just tore my glove up. I just put this one on. Alright, starting to look like a complete engine again. Grab it by the kickstand, he said. It would be fun, he said. Man, it's getting heavy again. And we can adjust this once it's back on the bike. Get it in the perfect little spot for kicking it over. So, I pulled the sprocket off the other engine. It's a 15 tooth. When this was an 88, we ran 15 teeth in the front, and I can't remember what we ran in the back, but we ran 15 in the front, and we had a huge rear tire. It's like a 3.5, and it totally didn't work. It threw off the whole geometry for the bike. So I think we might be able to put a 16 on with a smaller rear tire, because it'll have a little bit more leeway to move forward and back. I'm going to start with a 15. If not, we'll move up. If it's too slow, we'll move up to the 16. I highly doubt it. I ran out of braking really fast with an 88 kit on stock brakes. So, probably going to go with the 15. It's just, it's a little fiddly bit again. It's just like the cam chain gear. Really fun to mess with for half an hour on the side of the track when the engine's hot. So this intake came with this little spacer, as well as a gasket for both the mating surface of the spacer to the block, which would be this boy, just covered in fuel for some reason. I really hope I drained out this carb before I stored it. I probably didn't. Alright, so that goes on there. This goes on next, which I don't even remember if I ran this or not. I think I did. Line that up. Some clearance issues. Alright, I'm going to get this on, and I believe that's finally it for this engine. Next, I believe we put it back on the stands and lower the frame on it. Then we can put some oil and whatnot in there and fire her up. Excited about that. Hopefully she doesn't just explode within the first few seconds. I have yet to have that happen, but I'm not above that happening to me. Alright, so I got the engine in place on the stands. Wheeled the frame on top of it, like so. This just sits right up here. Try and line up the bolts, or the holes for the engine mounts, which are pretty much about there. This swings up and over there. Cool. So now that's just sitting there. I'm going to pop the bolts in just for a minute, because I have to do a few modifications to the throttle since we're running a different carb. Got to put a new line on. Oop, wow. Right there's through there. That also goes through there. I forgot about the frame being missing that portion of or the engine missing the portion of aluminum. Should be okay though. I'll keep an eye on it. So we're gonna have to pull this off the bars, and we're gonna have to pull the little CDI box out and replace out the rev box so we can blow it up in record time. Should be fun. Oh, let's adjust this first. This goes in this way. There's a couple notches down in the carb that you can see. And line up the small notch with the small post and the large notch with the large post. Pretty simple. And tighten that on there. And we can run this through this little post right here. It's a little bit of an angle, but should be okay. Run this up around the bar and back up. Around the bar and back up to where we are up here. There we go. And this keeps it all clamped tight. I've gone through probably 4 of these throttle tubes and housings. They're pretty easy to break. There's not a whole lot of meat holding them on, so you don't want to torque these down super tight. Enough that it's not going to spin on your bar, but you don't want to go ham on this because you'll crack the housing around there. All right, I'm going to get a little vloggy for a sec. So it's currently 8:48. And I think it's just early enough that I could start this thing if I put some oil in it and run some fuel through it. What I didn't really think about is that I need to drain the tank with the 91 that it's got in there, and I need to put in the race gas. Because we don't want a repeat of what happened last time where we blow the engine in 12 hours. We'd like this thing to last a little bit longer. This thing takes about a quart, I think. You check it with the dipstick. It needs a little bit more. Probably about that much. Yep, cool. Perfect for a little first start, and then we'll check it again after it gets warm. So there's no gas in the bike right now. The ignition's off. I want to give it a couple kicks to circulate the oil around. Let's put some gas here. Oh, we're going to get a funnel. Hey, used for the Hoonigan funnel. Okay, this should be enough. Plenty for a test. I just realized I never attached the engine cables to the actual ignition. Okay, now let's get rowdy. I'm super pumped that that fired up on pretty much the first kick after I put the ignition on. Alright, after a successful fire, it's like, I don't know, 9:15. I'm going to try and get this bike completely back together in the next 10 minutes. Ready, go! And that's it. The only thing to do now is to take her to probably Adams and give her a little shakedown before we go and do a nice little 8-hour race with her. Should be pretty fun. Well, that was a hell of a lot of fun, and I really love stripping this bike. It's really easy to work on. There's never been something that's too far gone that I haven't been able to fix on it so far. Can't wait to get to the track, see what it can do, and yeah. Thanks for coming along on this little journey for putting an 88 kit on something that probably should have taken a couple hours and ended up taking about 3 or 4 days. Also, if there's anything I can be doing in these videos, let me know down in the comments. I want to get better at this. I know some of my cinematography is pretty bad. My camera work is pretty awful. Hope you're enjoying the content. I'm going to keep making it because I'm out here in the garage spending a ton of time doing this anyway, and it's a little bit more fun to shoot it. And yeah, so I'll see you next time.